Voice and Phenomenon by Jacques Derrida. Translated from the French by Leonard Lawlor. Read by Jacob Flanagan. Chapter 2. The Reduction of Indication. That phenomenology belongs to metaphysics is revealed doubtlessly in the theme to which we are now returning, the exteriority of indication in relation to expression. Husserl devotes only 3 sections to the essence of indication, and in the same chapter 11 sections are devoted to expression, since, according to a logical and epistemological concern, what is at issue is to secure the originality of expression as meaning, vouloir dire, and as the relation to an ideal object. The treatment of indication must be brief, preliminary, and reductive. It is necessary to push the indication to the side, abstract it, reduce it as an extrinsic and empirical phenomenon, even though a strict relation unites it, in fact, to expression, interweaves it empirically with expression. But such a reduction is difficult. Only in appearance does it look as though at the end of the 3rd section the reduction is accomplished. Indicative attachments at times of another type will not stop appearing later, and their elimination will be an infinite task. Husserl's whole enterprise, and well beyond the logical investigations, will be threatened if Verflechtung, attaching indication onto expression, is absolutely irreducible and in principle inextricable. If indication were not added onto expression as a more or less tenacious bond, but inhabited by the essential intimacy of the movement of expression. What is an indicative sign? First, it can be natural. The canals of Mars indicate the possible presence of intelligent beings, as well as an artificial, the chalk mark, branding, all the instruments of conventional designation. The opposition between nature and institution has no relevance, and does not divide the unity of the indicative function. What is unity? Husserl describes it as that of a certain motivation, Motivierung. Motivation is what gives to something like a thinking being the movement in order to pass in thought from something to something. For the moment, this definition must remain rather general. This passage can be that of conviction, Überzeugung, or of presumption, Vermutung. It always links an actual knowledge right now to a non-actual knowledge. In relation to motivation considered at this degree of generality, this knowledge can concern any object, Gegenstand, or state of affair, Sachverhalt, and not necessarily empirical existence, that is, individuals, in order to designate the category of the known actual or non-actual. Husserl by design makes use therefore of very general concepts, Sein, Bestand, which can cover being or subsistence, the structure of ideal objects as well as empirical existence. Sein, Bestehen, Bestand are words that are frequent and fundamental at the beginning of this section, are not to be reduced to Dasein, Existieren, or Realität. And this difference is quite important to Husserl, as we are going to verify in a moment. Husserl thus defines the most general essential common characteristic that gathers together all the indicative functions. In these cases, we discover as a common characteristic the following situations: certain objects or states of affairs whatsoever whose subsistence, Bestand, of what someone has actual knowledge indicate, anzeigen, to him the subsistence of certain other objects or states of affairs, in the sense that his conviction in the being, Sein, of the one is experienced as motivating, though as a non-evident motivation, a conviction or presumption in the being of the others. But this essential common characteristic is so general that it covers the whole field of indication and something else as well. Rather, since it is really an Einzeigen that is being described here, let us say that this essential common characteristic overflows indication in the strict sense. We are now going to have to approach this strict sense of indication, and on the one hand, and existence, Dasein, or Realität on the other. General motivation thus defined is that of a because, which can have the sense of indicative allusion, Hinweis, as well as that of deductive, evident, and apodictic demonstration, Beweis. In the latter case, the because links together evident and ideal necessities which are permanent and persistent beyond every empirical hic et nunc. Orator's note: hic et nunc is Latin for here and now. Husserl says, an ideal rule, here revealed, which extends its sway beyond the judgments linked by motivation, hic et nunc, and embraces as such in a meta-empirical generality all the judgments of like content and moreover all the judgments of like form. Motivations linking lived experiences, the acts intending objective ideal, necessary and evident idealities, may be of the order of contingent and empirical, non-evident indication, but the relations uniting the contents of ideal objects in evidential demonstration do not belong to indication. The entire analysis of Section 3 demonstrates that 1. Even if A indicates B with a complete empirical certainty with the highest probability, this indication will never be a demonstration of apodictic necessity, and defined here again the classical schema, it will never be a demonstration of truths of reason in opposition to truths of fact. Section 3's analysis also demonstrates that even if indication seems nevertheless to intervene in a demonstration, it will always be on the side of psychical motivations, acts, convictions, etc., and never be on the side of the contents of truth that are linked together. The indispensable distinction between Hinweis and Beweis, indication and demonstration, not only poses a problem formally analogous to the one we were opening up earlier in relation to Zeigen. What is monstration, Weisen, in general prior to this distribution into indication that points the finger, Hinweis, at the non-seen, into demonstration, Beweis, which also allows something to be seen in the evidentness of the proof. Also, this distinction sharpens then the difficulty of the entanglement that we have already pointed out. In fact, we now know that, in order of signification in general, every psychical lived experience on the side of its acts, even when the acts aim at idealities and objective necessities, is involved only with indicative concatenations. Indication falls outside the content of absolutely ideal objectivity, that is, outside of the truth. Here again, this exteriority, or rather this extrinsic characteristic of indication, is inseparable in its possibility from the possibility of all the reductions to come, whether they are eidetic or transcendental. Having its origin in phenomena of association, and always connecting empirical existence in the world, indicative signification will cover, in language, all of what falls under the blows of the reductions: factuality, mundane existence, essential non-necessity, non-evidence, etc. Do we not already have the right to say that the entire future problematic of the reduction and all conceptual differences in which they are declared, fact, essence, transcendentality, mundanity, and all the oppositions that are systemic within them, are developed in a hiatus between two types of signs, at the same time as the hiatus, if not in it, and thanks to it? Is it not the case that the concept of the parallelism which defines the relations between the pure psychical, which is in the world, and the pure transcendental, which is not in the world, and which gathers together in this way the entire enigma of Husserl's phenomenology, is it not the case that this announced here in the form of a relation between two modes of signification? And yet Husserl, who never wanted to assimilate experience in general, empirical or transcendental experience, to language, is constantly going to try to keep signification outside the self-presence of transcendental life. The question that we just raised would make us pass from commentary to interpretation. If we could answer the question in the affirmative, we would have to conclude against Husserl's express intention that the reduction, even before it becomes a method, would be merged with the most spontaneous act of spoken discourse, the simple practice of speech, the power of expression. Although this conclusion must constitute in our eyes a certain sense the truth of phenomenology, it would contradict at a certain level Husserl's express intention for two sorts of reason. On the one hand, this conclusion goes against Husserl's express intention because, as we were recalling earlier, Husserl believes in the existence of a pre-expressive and pre-linguistic stratum of sense, which in the reduction will at sometimes have to unveil by excluding the stratum of language. On the other hand, if there is no expression and no meaning, vouloir dire, without discourse, not all discourse is expressive. Although there is no possible discourse without an expressive kernel, we could almost say that the totality of discourse is gripped by an indicative web. extended silence for YouTube reasons.